Hey there, welcome to the My Risk Advisor podcast. This podcast is for anyone in the financial planning ecosystem with a focus on life risk insurance. I'm your host, Phil Thompson, Director and Financial Advisor at Sky Wealth, and I've been on a business journey over the last few years going from a struggling holistic advice firm with one staff member considering packing it all in to pivot the business now to being one of Australia's leading specialist insurance advice firms with over 7 advisors, 30 team members, and helping hundreds of clients every single year get important insurance cover in place. I am unashamed to say that this podcast is so I can continue to grow and develop as an advisor and a business owner as I interview some incredibly smart individuals. So keep on listening so you can learn alongside me. So today I've got Marc Fabris, who is former head of digital at Zurich and turned consultant and digital strategist, and now the founder of Risk Hub. So thanks for joining me, Marc.
Great to be on, Phil. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. So today what we're going to talk about kind of your experience, what you've done in the kind of insurance advice space, and then we'll talk about Risk Hub because that's recently launched and it's an exciting venture for you. So I want to know all about it and what the plans are for it. So, But before we get started, help us understand kind of your history today. What have you done?
Yeah, I've been around the risk space for too long to probably mention. But as I like to joke about, I was an advisor back when it was easy. So the early part of my career was in risk advice, and I've kind of moved through lots of parts of the value chain. And so joined the ivory tower, went into the corporate world, and kind of just moved through a mixture of business development, through product research, risk research. I've always kind of been a bit of a research nut. So whether I was advising and went too far into product definitions and then, and so product research, business development, as I say, I was product managing for a while, and that was back in the day, I think working for AMP for a while, went to Zurich into a few roles in strategic marketing and sales strategies and research. And I was fortunate enough to grab a role for a couple of years over in Europe with Zurich as well, which was brilliant experience. So I was there for a while. I went over there as actually the global head of new distribution, which sounded really cool. The role was made redundant 7 weeks after I got there. So there was a lot of changes at the time. Thankfully landed on my feet and continued on in a digital marketing role, which was pretty cool. Working with across different countries, helping to collaborate on digital experiences and really appreciating things like design and just getting projects done. So I really enjoyed that, as well as things like the skiing and the travel over there. It was just really good experience across multiple countries. Came back with Zurich into a head of digital role for a few years, delivering some pretty cool stuff, I think, around sort of advisor experience and delivering on parts of the distribution chain. And then they gave me the opportunity to go out consulting. So I was made redundant there.
I love that. It gave you the opportunity to consult. How good is that?
So that's a lot of time in the corporate world. And so
what made you go into consulting and not think about, or did you think about, do I get into advice? Do I go into another corporate role? Yeah,
it's kind of funny. When I left the advice world, it was always kind of like, I think I'll be back to it. I haven't yet. But I've just really enjoyed being able to kind of make a difference around the advice space. And so I guess it was the opportunity to go, I've done this in corporate for a while. Let me now go into the real world. Although I got to say, my expectation was I'd pick up another role.
Yeah.
I walked out of Zurich, and as much as I kind of love the idea of going and working for yourself, it's obviously fairly daunting. And it's like, surely someone will offer me a job, but no one did. And so one foot after the other, I thought I'll just continue on and kicked off my consulting business, doing some work with advisors, with licensees and a bit of corporate work.
So, I mean, let's dial in on that, because there's a lot of people in the insurance ecosystem who are, there's redundancies and there's a shrinking market. And so, in terms of the actual premium inflows, it isn't decreasing. It's kind of staying steady, but the new business inflows is kind of dropped off a cliff. Yeah. So do you kind of feel like that's kind of a point in time, or people are, I guess my question is, are people investing less in that digital space, the expertise that you had from a corporate level?
Yeah.
Or is it just more of a, well, we're seeing a drop in new business, that's dropped off a cliff, so we can't be looking at, new hires, new positions?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough because we have seen over the years so many rounds of sort of redundancies, people cutting back. Probably for the first time in the last year or so, we've seen a lot of cutbacks in the sales area.
Yeah.
And that's what's, I guess, is kind of an indication that things are crook into brook. It's obviously things haven't been great. Sales down, advisor numbers are down. It's a challenge. Hopefully we've seen a bit of a flattening now. And so it's not, the cliff that we've seen is flattening out. So it is tough. I think then you kind of go, well, how do you spend as an insurer or provider? How do you spend fruitfully? There's been a lot of work to try and improve, use of data and insights. I've got to say, though, that you still see crazy decisions made, money spent that just doesn't seem to be useful. And one of the things, I guess, or principles I brought back from what I'd seen done very well across Europe was the design and insight piece. And I still think Australia's behind the mark when it comes to understanding audience and actually delivering on need. And so one of the things I've been very persistent and forceful around is actually trying to deliver programs based on your audience with appropriate insight, appropriate design, and then testing and continuous improvement.
And so, when you talk about that stuff, I think to myself, what are you talking about delivering programs? What does that actually mean in the advice space? Is that delivering a digital experience to bring on more clients? Are we talking marketing? You've come from the corporate space, so you're using corporate language of programs. But as an advice business, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, and that's fair enough. I guess it's probably one of the more significant programs would be like delivering a program of quote and apply software. Yeah. And that was when I came back from sort of my little jaunt in Switzerland. It was kind of the number one priority was to deliver a new quote and apply and underwriting engine system at Zurich. And it's probably one of my prouder moments of delivery. So that was a program of work that went over a good year and a half or so. And so that's the program. And in delivering that, a lot of programs are IT driven and they're not user experience driven. They're not end user insight driven. And that's probably that number one thing that makes the difference in my mind. Too much stuff is IT driven. And there's often 2, 3, 4 ways of doing things. So it's a matter of what do we want to deliver? What's going to make the most difference? How do we test up front and test along the way and then continuously improve to get the best experience?
Yeah, I mean, IT is an interesting one in the insurance space. So I've never worked in a corporate environment. The idea as a small business owner where you'd ship someone overseas to Zurich and pay for their relocation, then make them redundant in 7 weeks is kind of mind-boggling how much money that would cost. I just think that's crazy, lack of foresight. But in terms of having that experience from corporate world, and now you're consulting, so you've seen a lot more from not just the Zurich world, but more broadly. What are some things that you feel like insurers do really well in implementing new technologies, and where do you think they probably miss the mark? And not just from your experience in Zurich, but just across the board.
Yeah. Well, it's so mixed with what you see, across the market. And we can probably get to this, but one of the things I'd like to try and help in the industry is advocate for improved change and transformation that makes a difference. And hence the conversations I've been having with all sorts of stakeholders around trying to get better advisor insight into that. But I guess insurers have really approached it many different ways. Generally speaking, they've got a whole heap of data that they don't do a great job with. There's been over many years trying to do a better job. We've got better tools coming around that can, around AI, machine learning that can help insurers do a better job with what they've got to deliver more. What does that actually mean when the rubber hits the road? Well, it means that your experiences, those little things, whether it's a review or something you're doing for a new client, that they can understand a little better how to deliver that faster, easier, with more insight, with more context, maybe understanding the clients a little bit more so that your effort is less to deliver the same level of service. So there's a lot of opportunity to do that, but most times they don't hit the mark with actually delivering on it because they're not asking, hey, Phil, what is going to make the difference? It's too presumptuous around what they're trying to deliver. So there's different approaches, and many of them you don't quite see the delivery at the end of the day you'd like.
That's right. And it is an interesting space when you think about it just more broadly, when you think about insurance advice. Like, you got these massive insurance companies. They're just significant companies because they're offering life insurance, and the guaranteed nature of it needs to be sizable. And then they really just interface predominantly with small businesses. So there aren't very many large insurance advice practices. There are some bigger ones, but when you think about them as an actual business entity, they're still small to medium businesses. You don't have,
Absolutely.
several $100 million risk only businesses. And so it's kind of this interesting interface. Well, they think, I'll be presumptuous. Insurers think, well, we're dealing with hundreds or thousands of small businesses. How much insight can we gather from them in terms of, efficiency building, and, because they're all going to maybe have different views. But if there was one interface from an insurance advice point of view, where there was hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue in that business, and they said, well, we have a certain philosophy and the way in which we do it, and we bring in 25% of the market share for all insurers, so then insurers can get that insight. So it is a difficult, that the nature of our business is you got really small businesses. A lot of advisors are very small businesses interfacing with these massive, Titanics. And so it's hard for them to really go, well, who do we actually listen to? And in our business, as we're growing, and we're still a very small business, but as we're growing and submitting more policies and bringing on more clients, we've taken the view of, well, we want to kind of distill our learnings on every 12 months. And we want to feed that back to insurers. So we've just done an end of year report where we just basically say, this is the business we've written, this is where it's all gone. And then here's some insights from our team. So we've surveyed every one of our team members and say, well, what do you experience with, the BDM? What do you experience with the application software? And we try and rank them and give them as much insight as possible so we can be as transparent. And again, we're still a really small business in the grand scheme of things, but we are still one of the bigger ones out there. And so we're trying to give them that feedback, going, hey, we've got really good insights from our team and what we feel and think, because we know that you, as insurers, only interface with really small businesses. So it is that difficulty there, on top of the fact that insurers, we've seen Tao, their technology transformation took them out of the market for 2 years because of some missteps. We know the MLCs of the world are still kind of recovering from their missteps. So this investment in technology from an insurer's point of view, you can understand why the ones that are probably lagging behind, and we all probably know them as advisors who are lagging behind, why they're probably a bit hesitant to change their system.
Yeah. And a lot of these decisions, unfortunately, they're big chunky ones with a lot of money in them. But that's where I guess I'd say, is it not worth the bit of extra effort to make sure what you're doing is resonating? And that just, in my mind, gets missed too frequently. So I love what you're talking about and what you're doing with getting insight back. It's crazy that you need to do that proactively rather than reactively being asked that kind of information,
And and I've been a part of some of these, advisor roundtables and all this stuff, and it's and it is quite funny how it's more of a we want to sit down with advisors and listen to them, and great, I'm going to invest my time, to give this feedback. But sometimes it's just like, well, you're not actually asking the questions. You've got your agenda items, and you want to kind of say where you're hitting the nail on the head, but you're not really taking the feedback. And I get why. Again, that back to that point, I'm just a small business. This massive, multi-million-dollar business, isn't going to just listen to me and and change their processes, because it's such a it's a huge investment for them. But then it's kind of this whole thing of like, what's the Well, I mean, they should, but I guess even just as advisors, the advisor network, we don't really agree on what we want. But
you can always, what you're talking about is actually formulating some pretty good views across service delivery. You don't have to be an insurer that listens to every one of the views, listen to every one of the views. You don't have to actually take it on and take action as a result. But what you do is you grab that view and validate it. And so you could go and say, look, here's what we're hearing from Phil. Let's go and validate this, with the network. You can then actually go and get a better feel for, is this a consistent issue? And the bottom line is there's a heap of research that insurers have access to at the moment. I mean, advisor ratings and what they've got with they took over the Beddoes research. There's some really good stuff there from a lot of advisors saying, here's what our view is of your service and delivery product proposition across the board. That's not enough. But what it does is gives an insurer an indication of, hey, here's where we're not quite hitting the mark. Now let's dig into it. Now let's actually go and ask the advisors what we could do with our proposition to make the difference. And whether that's then as a bit of a zig or a zag in your current transformation process or whatever. But the bottom line is if you're too blind of what those needs are along the way, then either be pulling the plug on a massive investment or delivering something that doesn't quite hit the mark. And you go, well, geez, what was that for? Yeah. And too often we keep hearing it, that programs aren't, and I'll say programs, apologies, but pieces of work and delivering, experiences, delivering a portal, delivering platforms aren't quite hitting the mark. Yeah. And you go, well, what did you do up front around actually trying to get the right insight so that you were building a pathway that made sense, then checking in along the way. And then don't assume that you deliver correctly. Deliver something that you think's going to hit the mark, but promise to yourself and and your distribution that you're actually going to continue to improve. Yeah. There's this thing in about never having a phase 2. You've got to have phase 2. You've got to have phase 3. You've got to have continuous.
And that's the thing. The amount of times I talk to insurance companies who have their own underwriting kind of pre-assessment tools, and they try and talk to me why it works and why it's so good. And I just, every time I respond and I just say, it doesn't work for my business because I don't want to just write your product. I'm sorry. I know you want that. And that would be ideal for me if I could write one product because it'll save us a lot of time, but we just can't and we don't want to. But you require me to log in and input all that data when that's just a lot of work. If you don't give me the right answer, then I've got to go to the next one and do that. And so I get it from their point of view. Well, we're getting hundreds of, thousands of pre-assessments a month. So we need a more efficient process. We'll build this tool and have a massive investment in this tool. But they haven't kind of looked at, well, what's the reason we get these pre-assessments? There's a whole bunch of reasons advisors are doing it. And there's a whole bunch of reasons it's needed to be done. It is interesting, kind of this investment in certain tools that I feel like, we're our own business and we've got our own points of view that may be wrong from other advisors. But a lot of advisors probably feel very similar to us. And they're just sometimes it's missing this mark and going, I get why from your business point of view, it makes sense. And if you, as an insurer, say, we're not going to accept an application unless you use our pre-assessment tool. Great. That's the rules to write business with you. They're not going to do that because they don't want to lose the business out of it. And so, there's just kind of this overinvestment in certain areas. Yeah.
I think there's got to be a bit of a shift there from insurers. Yeah, obviously you want to have a proposition to market that is attractive. Whether that's your product, your service, your claims, all these pieces that make your proposition strong. You obviously want to have that strong and attract advisors and clients to your proposition. But at the end of the day, we have a massive issue in the market where advisors need to write more, be comfortable with more with risk and write more risk. And the only way we're going to do that is more comfort across all providers. And so where you've got those barriers because I have to do something specifically for an individual insurer, that's not great. When we're trying to, one of the things I talk about till the cows come home is the fact that holistic advisors or occasional advisors, occasional riskies, that's what we've got to regrow what these advisors are doing around the risk space. Double, treble, quadruple. And you're not going to do that unless you get more consistency across insurers, the ability to key less. And so there's a massive opportunity there. And insurers have got to, I guess, recognize that, yes, we need to have a strong proposition to attract, but we also need to help advisors write more broadly across the market, be more comfortable with the basics of risk, fundamentals, etc. Part of its education, part of its delivery.
It's interesting because my view is kind of, I don't know if that's going to happen unless there's an uptick in commissions, which I personally don't think that'll happen either. So this end goal of we need the generalists to write more risk. I think it's probably we're not going to come back unless there's a remuneration shift, which I don't think is going to be the case. So my view, and obviously I'm speaking to kind of my own business and the way we're set up as a risk-only business working with other advisors is I do feel like advisors need to, if they're not doing it, they need to refer it out. Like it's the idea of most advisors don't get into accounting because it doesn't make sense as a business model. Most advisors don't get into mortgage broking. Some have dabbled and found some success. Some haven't. And so, my view is, I think the holistic advisors, they don't holistically look at tax, mortgages. And so that therefore I think that there is a bigger pull to outsource that risk elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and again, I'm having those conversations with advisors. So maybe I'm kind of, my view of that is a bit clouded based on my own biases and my own experience. But yeah, I feel like my personal view is insurers need to be embedding themselves into the bigger insurance writers because they're making up a huge portion of that, the risk pool. Clients are kind of getting filtered through those businesses. And so anyway, I can talk a lot about insurers and what they can do better, but I want to talk about the advisors and your Risk Hub. So help me understand, what is Risk Hub? Why did you build it? Where did it come from? Where are you going? So let's just start off with what the heck is it?
Yeah, well, I guess what it is a central source of knowledge and information for risk advice. Now, I say risk advice, not risk advisors, because there's risk advisors and there's support. And one of the common people that gets missed in knowledge, education, tool support are the back office providers, whether it's practice managers, customer service, etc., in risk practices. So broadly speaking, what I want to do is be one of the services that helps this reinvigoration of risk advice. So you talk about things like the commissions, there's a challenge there, and unless there's an uptick, I think a big difference is viability here. So it's improving the viability of risk. And for a risk specialist, that means let's try and help become more efficient. For generalists or holistic, let's try and make it more efficient, effective, improve your knowledge so you can do it, or that you can outsource it. Simplistically speaking, what I'm trying to do is help the delivery of advice for these people. So whether or not it's a specialist or it's a holistic or generalist or an investment advisor that wants to refer. So what I'm trying to build is a home for those things that will help. There's lots of component parts to it, and I could talk about it forever, but there's a couple of key areas. One of the most simple component parts is insurer information. Now, we've had a bit of a chat about this over periods of time, but access to basic information of insurers can be so bloody hard. Whether it's because a website is designed terribly, or whether it's just things are hidden behind a login and you just can't find basic information. A lot of the feedback I get from advisors is, geez, I'd love it if you can help me find answers here more speedily. Whether that's a link through to info, whether it's sales team contact info, whether it's their documents, etc. And so there's a bit of that, is actually centralizing that and keeping it up to date. Another part is the directory. And there's a lot of conversations, we've participated in forums where advisors are looking for answers on what CRM should I use? I want to do some surveys, or is there someone that can help me with some coaching, or whatever it is. And oftentimes these conversations don't really go further than a referral or two. And so centralizing a directory of providers that can help risk practices is a big part of what I'm bringing together.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of pieces. Then there's a whole other host of resources, education, learning. The bottom line is I generally feel risk advice is the poor cousin.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this is about is providing a risk lens on knowledge, learning, support in one place.
Yeah.
And as we see the conversations and we see the helps needed, try and actually build it out in this home.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Like as I said, we're doing this end of year business report and we're sending it to BDMs as well as the state managers because the aim of it is so it gets pushed up further. So national managers will have a look at it and go, okay, well, there's a bit of thought behind this. Let's actually take it on board instead of an advisor whinging about one problem that's very front of mind for them and it goes nowhere from the BDM's point of view. And so, a part of this was like, oh, what are my state managers' email addresses? Like, some of them I looked up And they don't have it on their website. They don't have it
Yeah.
as a login. I went to MLC is a good example, and I say that because I can see on your website on the Risk Hub you've got MLC sales contacts, team, and that's probably one of the most common. Well, not the most common, but when you talk about like
it is
I need
surprisingly
a contact,
common. It's surprisingly common. It should be simple.
In the My Risk Advisor Facebook group, it's like, does anyone have a contact for said insurance company for this state? And the fact that you got that resource on there is just that alone is super helpful, because there are some, we work with most insurers, but I don't talk to the state managers for almost any.
Not regularly.
I don't need to.
Yeah.
And so it was just a matter of I had to literally Google state manager for X insurance company, and then one insurance company, as they're given their size, they're a bit smaller. They don't have state-based managers for Victoria only, and so I'm like calling out the BDM, who should you report to, and all this stuff. And so just that alone, just having a directory, having a resource hub where you can go, and
if you've got 100 advisors constantly doing that, and that's whether it's 100 or 1,000, that's one of the simplest principles, is to go, if I can do it once and save 100 people that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, surely that's got to be a benefit. And all those little incremental things, that's the simple part. So I kind of have this thought in mind of little things, big things. And these are the little things. These are the things that pragmatically I should be able to help in a very short space of time. I would have thought it was shorter, but some insurers are slightly less responsive than others. And so gradually we're building that out so we can sort that out.
Well, I got emailed all the sales contacts for a few insurers. I can flick over to you because I literally just found it out yesterday.
Mate, there's a key here that it's not about, for me, creation. It's about curation. And so it's bringing together, there's only so much I can do. It's bringing together, experts, sources, information in one place. So that's exactly the kind of thing where you go, well, hey, we've got it. Here's a home for it. There's
and also as our business, we've got 5 advisors currently. We're hiring, advisors at the moment. So if anyone's looking for a job, reach out to me. But we have 20 plus support staff for those advisors. Just this morning alone, they were, we've got some dedicated underwriters are on holidays. And so the team are like, we know who else to contact. We know other underwriters, but what's the generic underwriting email? And their things, it's like, well, in our business, we specialize it. This is all we do. And we're still getting these questions internally as a team. And so, which is fair enough. It's more than reasonable because this stuff is underwriters move, BDMs move, things are always moving, and it's hard as a business to communicate with everyone. Let's sit down and talk about all the movement with product. It brings no value to most people, but we need that resource.
Realizing it, that's the thing. That's why I'm having these conversations and why I'm being pretty fierce on it, because it's it should be fairly simple. And it might be the case that you've got some stuff behind a login. Fine, give me the link through so that at least, someone doesn't have to go click, click, click forever to find your information, so we can go straight through. And that's the basic. So claims and underwriting contact phone numbers and emails, those generic ones or pre-assessment ones, the link to the portal, the sales team contacts, they're the basics that we're probably 2/3 of the way there with that information at the moment. We're just trying to tidy up a bit more. But that's, it's funny that I thought there would be more demand for some other resources and help, more so, but the insurer piece is just continuously been sort of the top of the pops. And I've got to say, from the early, we've only been a couple of weeks, doors have been open, but the insurer section is what's being hit more than any other section.
Yeah, okay. So you've got, I'm on the website now. You got a section that says, you got support, which is articles, directories, resources, forums. You got learning. So you got some courses on there already, and you just launched. So you got some courses on there, which look really cool. But then, you've got an insurer section, and what's kind of help the listeners understand kind of what's in that insurer tab on the website. Yeah.
So we've, my objective would be to have all insurers fully engaged over time. And I've spoken to everyone's really positive for different reasons, timing or whatever. We haven't got everyone on yet. I've got to say, I'm very pleased that we've got the trust and engagement initially from PPS and MLC up front. So from that perspective, you move from all insurers having the core links and details through. So the idea is for every insurer, very shortly, we'll have all of those core links. An engaged insurer then goes up a notch where they can actually promote their key messages. They get a showcase page. So it's somewhere where you're going through to be able to, as an advisor, go, hey, what's the latest from this insurer? Or you might not have had the relationship with them. You want to just check what they're about. We'll gradually build that out with things like staff profiles, etc. And the other piece as an engaged insurer is being able to promote your events. And so, things like webinars, your road shows, and those kinds of things. And I've actually had positive feedback from insurers to go, well, actually, it would be nice to do a road show and not clash with someone else's. So,
yeah.
Well,
I mean, so, and I gave you this feedback pre-launch that that some of your stuff sounded a bit too like, this is great for the insurers and this is why insurers will want to get on board. But what's the big benefits for the advisors listening, and why? Outside of the contact page, which is, as I said, would be helpful for me in my current state, but it's not something I'm going to visit all the time. But knowing that there's a hub there where I can just get up-to-date info is really helpful. Yeah. What other value adds are there for the advisor community?
Yeah, well, the directory, partly what I've been trying to head towards with Risk Hub is an engagement model that kind of replicates what I provide for advisors individually from the consulting perspective. Now, as I say, this is a lot of curation, not creation. So it's not just about me, but the idea isn't just to have a library. The idea is actually to engage people in improvement. And I like to use the example, and I've got a couple of pieces in there already, but a simple example of surveys. And the bottom line is advisors are not surveying clients enough. We talked earlier in the chat about insights, and an insurer is getting enough insight. Equally, advisors aren't getting enough insight from clients. Yeah. And you shouldn't be afraid of someone's view, even if it's going to be negative, because then you can do something about it. NetWealth talks about 15 or 20% of advisors regularly surveying, right? It's a very small number of advisors doing that. So
sorry, let me just understand that. Is that 15 to 20% of the clients are being surveyed, or 15
of advisors?
Of advisors are actively surveying.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be that hard. And so then you go, well, what do I do about that? So the idea with the site is to introduce a topic such as surveys. And you often would see an article around, hey, you should survey your clients. Here's a couple of options, etc. But the idea is to take it a little bit further. So what I'll do is talk about that, then have directory providers. So then you can go, all right, let me tell me a little bit more about Typeform, Jotform, SurveyMonkey. So the idea is sort of breadth and depth. And so the directory gradually will build out the providers that can provide services for you in your practice. Then, whether it's through reviews, demos, commentary, tips, etc., will deepen that information. So then you might go, well, actually, I want a survey tool that integrates with my CRM. Which one might be best for that? And so the idea then is to go from introducing a topic that you should consider through to providing options from the directory. And so that's where the directory comes in. And then the resources then takes it perhaps into checklists, templates. So in the resources, we've got a couple of templates that you can copy to your heart's content for an NPS or a communication survey, et cetera, for your clients.
Yeah.
And so the idea is to go from an advisor perspective. I might see a conversation in a forum and it's like, hey, what should I do? And I'll look at that and I go, well, this is something we can help with. We can actually, there's a home now to put some answers and some resources. And you might go, hey, I've picked up a couple of really good tips with templates for this. Can we pop it in the resource center? Absolutely. Free access, for the breadth of the content. So that's the kind of idea.
Yep.
And then there's other tools that provide or services for risk advisors, and it's to build that out. Pre-assessment and pathology providers.
Yeah.
All those kinds of services as well.
Yeah, I can see that. You've got that in the directory. So, all right, amazing. This looks good. How much is it costing me?
So the idea here is to be funded by insurers and sponsors. So we're already off to a good start. The membership is free for everything apart from courses, but that's where at the moment that's something to be built out.
Yeah.
So the idea is at the minute across the board it's all free. As we build out more courses, then we're looking at putting a price tag on that. But courses also at the moment, the idea isn't normal, maybe CPD courseware. It could just be linking to other courseware that's out there. It could be creating some, or it could be hosting some. We're going to be hosting some estate planning courseware from the Legal Hub, for example. Okay. So that's just about ready to be launched. And so, it's a benefit for them to get a bit of promotion. We've got then courseware for advisors. Then, they get leads for their business as a result. So it works for everybody to have those kinds of services together.
Yeah, cool. And as advisors, we're notoriously cheap. So if someone else is funding the bill, then we're good for that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So basically anyone can log in, create an account, account, which I mean I've done already.
Yeah.
I got the email and I signed up straight away. So anyone can log in, create an account. You've got access to these resources. That's going to be growing over time and building out. So what's the end game for this? You're planning on doing a product rec style, like insurer comparison, build that into the website? Are you planning on, where's the future look like?
There's so many things to do, but there's a few things that I'm certainly not intending to do. There's some great services out there that are like product research specific, like LifeTech Assist. Dave Spiteri does a great job at that, and I'm certainly happy to refer people into that service that he provides, which is brilliant. And so there are a lot of gaps that I think are able to be filled. I do want to look more at providing content for advisors for use with clients. So whether that's pointing to services or curating more together, there's a couple of big conversations that I've got going on, and you're aware of some discussions we've had around pre-assessments. It would be wonderful to see some multi-insurer capabilities in Australia. So whether it's advocating, driving, or working with people collaborating, I'm very much into collaboration on things like this to go, well, how can we turn this into something more substantial to save dramatic time in the onboarding process or the review process, a couple of the big chunky pieces, and just shining a light or actually getting closer to providers like the pathology and paramed piece. Artificial intelligence is huge. So trying to put together a proof of concept to help with some of those component parts of advice delivery too, with some big partners. So basically trying to see how we can dramatically change the chunkier parts of the process. The short term is about how can we pragmatically help, and there's lots of little ways to help pragmatically improve and just then grow it out. And the idea with a forum in as part of Risk Hub is to help drive that, is to have that conversation to go, what's next, what else is needed, and so that'll gradually enhance as well. So lots of big ideas for sure.
Yeah, cool, amazing. Well, thanks heaps for coming. I think I've asked heaps of questions about it, and I think the Risk Hub is a great idea, and we've talked about it before it was launched, and I gave you some feedback, in my usual frank and honest and blunt way, which is people can take it or leave it. If they want yes people, then don't come to me. Is my response.
No, absolutely.
But it's great. It's a great initiative. As I said, all whether you're a generalist advisor and dabbling in it, you need a place to give you a overview of all the insurers. We're not in a place these days where you only write one insurer, and there are still some firms out there who do it. Some big risk writers who write predominantly one or two insurers for a whole bunch of reasons, not good or bad. But the majority of advisors are keen on having product agnostic and getting a good sense of it. But that information around that is very difficult, especially in a space that is the ugly cousin. Like insurance is the ugly cousin, gets forgotten about. There's not much resources in it. So having a space where someone's been very thoughtful, listening to advisors, and one thing you've been great at is getting feedback. Hey, Phil, what do you think of this? Like, tell me, as good, bad, or ugly. I just want to know what's going to add value.
Oh, absolutely. A big part of this has got to be that conversation. It's got to be that rich feedback, and hence every piece on the site has got the capability for feedback and comment, and as well as the forums. So very keen on that.
Great.
To build it for them.
To get your hands into the Risk Hub, it's just riskhub.com.au.
Absolutely.
I asked the question, even though I can see it on my screen.
No,
it's right
it's
there.
good.
But
and we want to absolutely encourage insurers to get on board. We want to encourage anyone that provides services.
For sure. Advisors get on board. So then Marky can go and say to insurers, we've got, thousands of advisors here. Please pay us money so we can get this running, so we can get the doors
Absolutely.
Awesome, Mark. Well, before we finish up, I've got a few questions for you. When do you get a chance to do your emails?
Pretty much all through the day. And so, I'm on it most of the time, try to keep on it, and particularly through this period of getting this thing happening.
Yeah. It's one of those things I've been asking many people for many years, and it's still the bane of my existence, my emails. So I'm just working real hard to minimize that impact on my life. And then the last question, do you have any interesting hobbies?
I don't know, food and wine.
Anything to do with food and wine? Wine. What wine do you have? I'm not a wine.
I like a good glass of red. It's
okay.
Yeah.
Good. And do you have like a budget? Is it a minimum budget, or are you just like, because I'm a tight ass, so it's like
I'm with you. I think we're very lucky in Australia that we can have a bloody good red wine at a bloody good price.
Yeah.
And so I'll be down at Dan's or Liquorland for an $11 or $12 nice Shiraz that does the job pretty well. But equally, if you've got a St. Henri or something that you want to crack open with me, I'll happily partake.
I can promise you I will not have that because they all taste the same to me. So I thought you were going to say I'll be down at Dan Murphy's at 11 a.m. And I thought, well, okay, settle down. Awesome. Thanks heaps for coming on the show.
Great to chat.
And best of luck with everything in Risk Hub.
Thanks, mate.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Bye. If you've enjoyed this episode and you think someone else will get value out of it, I'd love it if you could forward it on to them. And as always, we can continue the conversation in the My Risk Advisor Facebook group. All you need to do, open up Facebook and search My Risk Advisor, and I'll see you in there.